Business Bites. Go further and grow stronger with InvestNI. Join local businesses generating billions exporting to Europe. Check your export readiness with InvestNI's free online export health check. Business Bites with InvestNI.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Bites. It's a great pleasure to invite our guest this week. He is, of course, a cyber expert. It is Mr. Wayne Denner. A very, very big welcome to Business Bites, Wayne.
Hello, Caroline. How are you? It's wonderful to be joining you today on this episode of Business Bites.
I love your background there. It's bringing back childhood memories there, Wayne.
Yeah, there's a lot of old school material right back there, and I'm sure some of the viewers listening in will remember the old Game Boys and the different items back there. It's all from my childhood.
Absolutely. And listen, talking about Game Boys, I mean, one of the first introductions, I suppose, to being online for children when we talk about online safety is kind of gaming and things like that. But I want to talk about you first of all. You've got a really interesting career background. Tell us a little bit about who Wayne Denner is.
Yeah, my career background is very, very interesting. It's very colorful. There's been a lot of different things happening. I suppose in the early days, I was always interested in technology. Right back in about 1995, when I was just about to leave school, the internet started to become a thing. I remember we got the internet into our house. It was dial-up internet. It took about 3 days to load a web page. And then by the time you loaded the web page, you would got bored and you would have went off outside again. So not like the technology, Caroline, that we have today, where we've all got a smartphone in our pocket and we're connecting to high-speed internet. But that was my first introduction to technology, if you will. Although I was using technology, old Game Boys, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, it really wasn't until I sort of left school and I became very interested in the software development side of things. And that's a lot of where my background actually comes from. Self-taught in that space, building some very basic websites in the late 90s, using very basic HTML and then CSS, and then moving into more database-driven websites. And then, of course, in the early 2000s, I set up one of the first social networking websites in Ireland, a website called outlastnight.com, and we grew it to a user base of 85,000 registered users. So that was my introduction, if you will, to the digital marketing landscape and where it's all, come from in terms of what we all do now and what we all take for granted in terms of buying and selling and looking for products and services online.
Absolutely. And of course, and I remember the dial-up days too, Wayne, of course, with that accessibility and that growing accessibility to the net, as great as it does come with a downside, and that is the cybersecurity side. Now, you started, of course, educating children in schools about safety online.
Yeah, so about 20 years ago, I got a call from a local primary school in my area, and they were having some issues. Back then, it was Ask FM, for example, was the website where they were having the issues with some children and young people being bullied, in fact, cyberbullied on the platform. And the school principal says, look, Wayne, you work in the technology space. Our parents are very concerned. Is there any chance you could come into the school and deliver a 15-minute presentation on how parents can help keep their children safer online? And that was really the start of that. And then it kind of snowballed from there, Caroline. More and more schools got in touch, more and more issues started to crop up. And then schools were asking me, particularly secondary schools, is there anything, Wayne, you have for secondary school students? Do you have a workshop that you can deliver for students? And then, of course, I created the workshop that I have today called Up Your Game Online. And that's a workshop for secondary school students, first to third years, fourth to fifth years. And then, of course, as the technology, children get access to it younger and younger, I'm now going into a lot of primary schools. So that's really where that side of the business kind of stemmed from.
And obviously, with the dawn of social media, etc., it's a never-ending, I suppose, rabbit hole that we get pulled down into, and very much covered, I suppose, the safety for children online. And I want to shift to that safety for business. Now, obviously, we hear about, cyber attacks, things like that. But on a basic level, Wayne, what should businesses be doing to start off that process of making sure they're safe online?
So let's give some context around that. You know, we are in a world now where there's a growing threat of cyber attacks, as you rightly mentioned. We're averaging about one data breach now every 30 days. So that'll give you a little bit of context about the severity of this sort of stuff, where people, businesses, organizations in particular, really need to be very mindful of that. I mean, there's not a company or a business that I don't know in Northern Ireland isn't connected to the internet in some shape or form. A lot of transactions take place online. A lot of invoice fraud happens online, where businesses maybe receive what they think is an invoice that they need to pay. It's actually come from the cyber scammers themselves, and it's a phishing attack. And if somebody isn't vigilant and doesn't pick up on that, well, there's a high likelihood that somebody could go ahead and actually click on that link, maybe compromise their systems, but maybe go ahead and pay that invoice. And that invoice isn't, you know, a real invoice, and they've been a victim then of a cyber crime. So training is very important for businesses of all shapes and sizes. It doesn't matter whether you're a one-man band. Like if you're a small one-man band, you still need to be aware of this stuff, because in fact, you might be more vulnerable because maybe you don't have the safeguards that a bigger or larger company might have in place in terms of an IT department that's going to mitigate against these threats. So this is something that really impacts everybody. And what I'm saying to businesses, you need to keep yourself up to date. You need to engage with regular training, and you need to make sure that your systems are as secure as they can possibly be. Simple things, Karen, like having a good antivirus on your computer, having a firewall in place, being careful about what you click on, even the personal information that you're sharing freely on social media platforms and across the web can put you at risk as well.
The inoffensive things that you might not even think of, and obviously passwords, things like that.
That's the big one. You know, I mean, many people, and again, I know the numbers on this, 73% of people use the same one password everywhere. You know, so people are incredibly lazy when it comes to this type of stuff because they think it's never going to happen to them. And the reality of it is it can and it does happen. So practicing good digital hygiene is a term that I use when I'm talking to businesses about this sort of stuff. You know, making sure your staff don't have the same password that they use to log into their social media account to log into one of your systems online. Because if that password gets compromised, then that information is going to be leaked online, and then somebody then could pick that up. Or a lot of this information, for example, is bought and sold on the dark web, which is where a lot of cyber criminals get their hands on data breaches and data which has been exposed in data leaks.
And I think there is a feeling that that's not going to happen to me. And I think that, you know, we get a little bit comfortable, a little bit lackadaisical with those passwords, but it could happen to you.
I get contacted at least 4 or 5 times a week, Caroline, every week, from somebody who's had their business Facebook account compromised. And I always ask a very simple question when they reach out to me. Did you have the two-factor authentication turned on in your account? 9 times out of 10, people haven't even got that turned on. And that's the first line of defense that's going to help keep your account secure. So there are things that people can do themselves to help increase the security across all of their digital platforms. Because if your business Facebook account or your Instagram account gets hacked, that's a pretty big impact on your business. Because think of all the people now that are not going to be able to engage with you. And then if the cyber criminals have taken that over, they're going to be posting links potentially to fake content and also trying to hack people and scam people that may be in your network as well. So again, due diligence is very important. Having the correct steps in place is really important as well.
So if people had to do one thing today when that they're watching, and we've kind of maybe, you know, elevated that concern slightly, shall we say, what is the one thing you would advise businesses in Northern Ireland to absolutely make sure that they're doing today?
Well, it's actually 1/2. The first thing would be don't reuse passwords, because that's a major, major concern, particularly when we're averaging on one data breach every 30 days. The likelihood of you getting caught out with this is extremely high. The second thing is turn on your two-factor authentication. Just don't take a chance on this stuff. But you don't just turn it on one account. You need to turn it on across all of the accounts that you use. Thankfully, in 2024, Caroline, most platforms have good, robust security settings in place, but people just haven't got them enabled.
And obviously, when you talk about those personal accounts as well, to be very mindful that you are adopting. I mean, I'm a mother, so I'm doing the same thing for my family and for my children. But as a business owner, also, I'm very mindful that my personal accounts are also a link to my business.
Exactly. So again, you have to be aware of that as well, where if you didn't have the correct settings on the personal account, that could get compromised as well. And that might be the back door, if you will, into taking over the business account if they're able to get that information. So people really just need to be a lot more careful with the personal information that they're sharing freely online. And if they're signing up to any platforms, apps, or websites, always just stop and think, do I really need to give this information? 9 times out of 10, you probably don't. And just think if that platform or that app is involved in a data breach, all of that information gets leaked, and that can put you at a real greater risk.
Definitely for me, digital hygiene is the phrase of the day, Wayne Denner. And you said to me earlier, obviously we've just celebrated Internet Awareness Day, Internet Safety Day, and your response to me was, every day is Internet Safety Day.
Exactly. We have these big events throughout the year. We have Anti-Bullying Week in November, and we have Safer Internet Day in February. The thing about it is every day is Safer Internet Day. We're spending a lot more of our time online, Caroline. We've got AI coming down the tracks at a real fast pace. We're going to see more automation, more digital transformation. Now's the time to get at the races and practice that good digital hygiene.
Good advice. Wayne Denner, thank you so much for joining us on Business Bites, and thank you for watching.
Business Bites. Go further and grow stronger with InvestNI. Join local businesses generating billions, exporting to Europe. Check your export readiness with InvestNI's free online export health check. Business Bites with InvestNI.